On this episode of AV Week, we look at how one integrator was able to help pull off the NFL's big game, global expansion in audiovisual ahead of ISE 2018. Speaking of ISE, we talk about what to expect from the world's biggest audiovisual trade show. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 336, recorded Friday, February 2nd, 2018. Big Game AV.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Utalogy and by Extron Electronics.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to talk about the news and information of the week. First and foremost, my buddy and pal up in the great country of Canada. His name is Brock McGinnis, and he is from Westbury National. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Always glad to be on with you, Tim.
I appreciate it. Brock and I get to hang out this week at ISE. We'll talk about that here in a second. Also with us, this gentleman needs no introduction because he's a Patriots fan. That's all I'm going to say about Craig McCormick. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
He also writes for a magazine called Commercial Integrator, so that too. But he's a Patriots fan, and
You're
that's
doing better at about 9:30 on Sunday night when the Patriots win again.
Anyhow, yeah, we're recording this on Friday as we do every week, and so by the time you listen to this, the Patriots may or may not have won their 37th Super Bowl. Who knows?
That's true. That could come back to bite me, couldn't it?
It could. You know, I'm not going to mention the fact that the Patriots have never won against the Chicago Bears in a Super Bowl ever.
That is true.
So all I got. It's the only one I got in the last 30 years. All right. Here we go. First and foremost, from Commercial Integrator, we'll talk about the Super Bowl and talk about the big game. Alpha Video and Audio is a company up in Minnesota. And really quickly, the Super Bowl this year is being played at US Bank Stadium in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Alpha Video, though, has done a lot to play a role in that technology that's in that stadium. Craig, I'm going to start with you on this. First of all, when it comes to big installations like this and big events like this, how much pressure does that put on the folks at Alpha Video to make sure that this comes off without a hitch?
Yeah, I mean, I asked actually that exact question when I interviewed Jeff Oak about this story, and he said he tries to treat it no different than any other project. I don't know.
How is that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's 100% true, but that is what he said. I'm sure there's a lot more testing of the equipment and making sure everything runs the way it's supposed to work. But really, the ultimate test is going to come on Sunday when the Super Bowl happens. I mean, and then they have to respond if there is any sort of problem. So he said that they built in a lot of contingencies and backups and duplicates and things like that to make sure nothing goes wrong. But that's basically what it comes down to is it's obviously a big project, and especially being right in their backyard since they're in Minnesota. He said I think the stadium is a few miles from where their office is, so it's literally in their backyard. It's obviously a big deal, but he said they try to treat it like any other project, and try to make any project that they do be as good as it can be. So
yeah, absolutely. Brock, Westbury is not unfamiliar with events like the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that you guys have ever done the Super Bowl, but you've done big events and important events, high profile events.
Yeah. What
do you guys put into that? Craig mentioned redundant contingency plans, maybe redundant systems. When something has to work, right? It has to come off without a hitch, or at least if the hitch is there, it's barely noticed. How do you guys do that?
So the issue is not the house systems. It is not the permanently installed systems. And I have to tip my hat, by the way, to the people who made a decision to hire Alpha. They hired a local contractor, and they hired a really good contractor, and they did not hire a lowest bid contractor from 3,000 miles away, and have it turn into the kind of rash that so many large stadium and arena installs have over the last few years. I have every confidence that what Alpha has done there is rock solid and perfect. However, they have thousands of people from the broadcasters and the league in that building running amok with their systems. So there will be RF in that building that is never normally there on what's the expression, any given Sunday?
Yes, sir.
And all sorts of different media outlets, all with wireless camera transmitters. There will be a number of broadcasters there and broadcasters, God bless them, they have absolutely no respect for the house systems. They will come in and unplug a rack full of gear and plug their own stuff in. And it's true.
I'm laughing because I've seen it happen. Yes.
They take over. So if anything untoward does happen in an audio or video sense, my guess is that it will have nothing to do with the Alpha folks, and they are about as concerned of this as anyone else. That's just the nature of sport and the nature of the game, and we'll all keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing to Brock's point, I was talking with the folks at Audinate, at Dante, and they had one story into another really quickly. They're coming out with a new software package that allows folks, let's say that you are the facilities manager of US Bank Stadium, Fox Sports, or I guess it's ABC this year. ABC rolls up and plugs in. Currently, the current system is, if it's a Dante system, they get access to every single channel of audio. This new software package, though, allows the facility managers to say, oh, no, here's your 2 channels. That's all you're going to see.
Right.
Systems like that, I think, is incredibly smart and important, because to Brock's point, there is a tendency for folks who are in a new situation, and they know what they need and they know what they want, and they
take it.
Yeah.
And they take it because they have ultimate responsibility to a much larger viewership than the people who happen to be sitting on that stadium. So it's very stressful for a lot of people that will be involved. But I have every confidence that the stadium has also, as a modern facility, been designed with exactly that in mind, and that there will be some separation of church and state, and the broadcasters will be on a certain set of links, as we have in some of the buildings we've done, to keep them as far away from the house systems as possible. So
yeah, it makes sense.
The league also throws their weight around a bit.
Well, the good news is nobody will be watching the Super Bowl, so if something does happen, nobody will actually notice that it happens, right?
Well, I think the biggest fear, Craig, this is a segue, by the way, Tim. The biggest fear is that it's going to be one of those 47-7 blowouts, and nobody's going to be watching the second half of the Super Bowl. So
in other words, did Brock just predict that the Eagles are going to win 47-7?
I don't know about
huge.
That.
Not unless their defense is doing a lot of scoring.
Wow. You know what? I got a lot of respect, really quickly. I got a lot of respect for Nick Foles. At one time, St. Louis did have a football team, and he was a St. Louis Ram for about 30 seconds. And so the fact that he's actually in the big game now is good for him. So.
Well, at least you have a rooting interest for this year, right?
Not really, no. I mean, it's not. I was rooting for the Vikings, honestly. As a Bears fan, anybody in the North, with the exception of the Packers, they would have been fine. But yeah, now I'm going to ISE, and I'll be in bed by the time the Super Bowl starts. So, speaking of ISE and speaking of Integrated Systems Europe, a couple of us on this panel are heading over. Craig McCormick, I'm going to have to mail you some pastries from Amsterdam. Stroop waffles, yes.
I will take them.
But you guys wrote a piece on global expansion, and the tagline I want to use here, and I'll start with Brock on this. Tagline you used on here was, the benefits outweigh the negatives if they can pull it off.
Yep.
Mr. McInnes, this is your first time at Integrated Systems Europe.
Yes.
I read a piece from SCN the other day that Mike Blackman says this is officially the biggest audiovisual trade show in the world. I'm not sure why suddenly it's officially, but because last year they had 73,000. So I would think last year would have been, but he says this is the biggest trade show in the world for AV. Given that we continue to talk about global expansion and a number of folks are expanding outside of their borders, I'm hosting a panel at ISE about working beyond your borders with a couple of folks who actually do that. What does this, to Craig's point, if they can pull it off, well, what does it take to pull off doing global AV?
Well, I don't do global AV, so I don't know, and it scares the heck out of me. No, the thing is that customers want a single throat to choke internationally, and they want all their facilities to be the same. They want all their processes to be the same. They want their rooms to be the same, and so a Citibank or a Morgan Stanley or maybe an Alphabet or an Amazon, as executives travel from city to city to city, they're finding exactly the same capabilities. So I think that a number of people in the AV industry, as before them, the IT industry and the security industry, started to have a look at this as a great opportunity to grow with their clients, with their North American clients. And in the case, there's a number of UK companies that work internationally as well, that we know of, that, they're doing projects in the United States as their clients have expanded here. I think that the pull it off decision is, do you work with local partners and try and establish consistency through that medium? Or do you transplant and attempt to transplant the processes that you use to roll out projects here in North America in other countries? And I think that is probably, Craig, what you were referring to when you talked about the can you pull it off? Can you? And we've seen some people kind of expand and contract globally, and they've come back with their tails between their legs, and then they've gone, no, now we get it, we figured it out now, and they're back out expanding globally. Certainly AVI SPL is well on their way to being a global brand, and as recognized in Europe or Asia as they are here in North America.
Yeah, and I think to Brock's point, a lot of times this global expansion is a case of an integrator following their customer. That's kind of how it starts. It's not usually the integrator saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to China and open an office there and hope something happens." It doesn't really work that way. It's usually a case of, you make a decision. Your customer is going overseas, and you decide you're either going to follow them or you're going to let them work with somebody else. That's pretty much how it works. In the story, I did talk about things like the PSNI Global Alliance, which is one way that companies are able to expand. As Brock was saying, working with a partner that's working through the alliance. There's the Global AV Partnership, the Global Presence Alliance, that sort of thing. But it's not easy. AVIXA is still trying to figure out how to kind of make it work. They're expanding. They're adding shows in various countries around the world, and they're doing their best to expand their footprint as well. So there's a lot of pressure to it, and it's not cheap to go into a new country, and it takes some time to get yourself established. So it's a big undertaking, but it's something more companies are certainly doing. I did want to mention one thing about AVI SPL. Certainly they're the biggest integrator in the business, but right now they have offices in, I believe it's 5 countries. So even a company as big as them, they don't have the global presence that just by themselves. They don't have a global presence either. So they're working toward it, but certainly they're nowhere close.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have 2 folks two companies that I won't necessarily punk them out and name them out, but there's one that is a fairly decent sized integrator out of the Midwest here, who in talking with their ownership group and their leadership group, they have no desire to go international. They've done a couple projects to Brock's point for some clients that are global, right? And they didn't see the value overall. I don't know if it's bottom line value or customer relationship value in doing those handful of projects. Another one though, they have done what Brock has said. They've expanded and contracted, and now they've kind of got the hang of it, and they've got offices, 3 or 4 offices globally, where their clients are, right? To Craig's point, they're not going into, Italy because they think it's a cool country and they think they can do some good there. They don't know, they're following their clients. But once they get there and they get established, then they're looking around and going, this is a pretty good market. Now let's expand beyond just our 1 or 2 customers that are here.
Mm-hmm. And there are some countries where if you're not part of an alliance or part of a partnership, you're not getting in. There's no chance. China is one of those countries where you can't, if you don't have, I believe it's close to 100% Chinese ownership, you're not getting into China. So
well, and the other thing is cultural differences, and I remember back in my grad school days talking about international business and international marketing. There are certain business practices in certain parts of the world where encouraging a local official with monetary donations is not only encouraged, it's expected.
Oh yeah.
And bribing here in the U.S. is illegal, and bribing in these countries it's how you do business.
Yep.
And so it's learning those ins and outs as well.
I think I described those in my stories as political differences.
Yes.
It is also illegal for a U.S. company to bribe a foreign official or bribe somebody elsewhere. So they're just because that's the way it's done doesn't mean that an American company or a Canadian company could do it that way. We've done both.
You bribe people?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
So
I wanted you to be clear about that, just to clarify.
No. You got me. I wish I had enough money to bribe people. You're great. So there's a couple of approaches to doing foreign projects, and going with your client. We've worked in Croatia, we've worked in Qatar, we've worked in London, England, we've worked in Hong Kong. Half those projects we did with partners or subcontractors, and about half of them we've done ourselves and parachuted in. Each has its advantage in doing it. At no time have we ever considered planting somebody on another continent. Would we like to expand into the United States? Yes, that is a stated objective at this point. But for us, but another continent, you're right, Craig. Cultural differences, how to get into a market, how to get scale within that market, how to get the good people, who are the good people, and if they're really good, why would they want to work for somebody who's coming in from outside? It's a daunting task, and some people in our industry have been successful, and others spectacularly not so.
Yeah. Well, if you ever decide to expand into, I don't know, maybe the St. Louis area, I know a guy. Or 2, and a gal as well. So, all right,
it's not among the top 5 on our list.
Oh, come on! At least top 10.
I don't think our list has 10. On
we have a hockey team.
You do, and a good one.
Well, currently a good one, yes. So
yeah.
All right, I'm going to do something I have never done in the 6 years I've been doing this show. I'm going to turn over the reins of the hosting, or at least the asking questions, to somebody else. I mentioned the fact that we're going to ISE. Brock is actually coming to Integrated Systems Europe as well. By the time you're listening to this, we will be on the ground in Amsterdam, getting ready. I'm attending Tide on Monday, so by the time you're listening to it, I will be at the Tide conference that VIXA is putting on, similar to what they did at Infocom this year. But Mr. McCormick, being the journalist that you are going to ask Mr. McInnes and I questions about ISE.
I wonder if Bradford Ben is jealous of me right now.
Probably.
Yeah. So one of the stories that we posted this week on Commercial Integrator talks about basically the expense and whether it's worth it to go to ISE. And Brock, I know you're a first timer this year, and I'm curious, why you decided this year it is worth the expense for you to go and check out the show.
Well, it was interesting reading that article because the article was based on the result of a survey that you did, and you've got a group of people that you go out and survey, and there were two of us that said that we were going for the first time. Of all the, I don't know how many people you surveyed, but it was a very small group. So I've wanted to go for a number of years. I've seen the shift in product introduction and new technology introduction that has occurred from June and Infocom to February and ISE. And all of the new stuff seems to happen in February. These may not be shipping products, but they're certainly the direction that the industry is taking. And it has been a global shift for a global market, and that I think has been been the driver for me in wanting to go. The reason that I'm attending is that AVIXA reached out to me.
Now we both owe them $1.
Yes, you do.
They reached out to me and said, "Hey, you attended Tide in Las Vegas, and we know we got some real positive feedback from you. How come you're not attending Tide in Amsterdam?" I said, "Well, I'm not going to Amsterdam." And they asked, "Well, if we helped out with the conference fee, would you go to Tide?" And that started an internal discussion about what value there would be in somebody like me attending. And ultimately, the answer was yes. Let's call it $5,000 that it takes to go to Amsterdam and stay and do the conference and do some of the other things that are there. The relationships that I can find, the global relationships, not North American ones, but integrators, for example, that are planning on doing some business with their clients in North America and are looking for a partner, or manufacturers that are looking at introducing product into North America for the first time and are looking for some pioneers to be part of that. That opportunity for me was quantifiably worth a few days of my time and $5,000. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm pleased that AVIXA just kind of poked, because sometimes even salespeople need to be sold a little bit on why they should do things. That's why we're doing it.
Yeah. Tim, from your perspective, obviously you've gone the last, is it 3 years, or is this the fourth year? Yeah. Fourth year. How's the show changed, in that time?
Oh my gosh.
Other than expanding and, taking over the entire city.
Well, that's the thing is, though, so we went, this will be our fourth year. So our first year was 2015, and there was only 12 halls, which at the time I thought, oh my goodness, it's daunting. Right. And I remember Brock very, very graciously gave me some advice beforehand and trying to take over those 12 halls. Now there's 15, right? So 3 years ago, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to do it this year. Right.
You don't have the booth this year.
I don't have the booth. Yes, last year I broke my foot ahead of ISE, so I do not have a broken foot this year. Thankfully, knock on wood. There's last year they had 73,000. They're projecting 75 or 76,000 attendees over those 4 days. This will be my fourth year hosting a panel over in Hall 11 about unified communication. Great panel. It's fantastic. It's on Thursday from 5 to 6. I'm doing AVWeek. I'm doing another panel also in Hall 11 on Friday. So what it's given us two things. First of all, it's given us exposure to brand new product announcements, which is why you go to these trade shows, right? As a journalist, you want to get the newest, latest, greatest thing. Last year, they had over 200 product announcements, and I expect about the same this year. What it gives, our audience and your audience is, exposure and information on what they can start planning. Because the one thing I've heard over and over again in all the pre-interviews that I've done is folks aren't bringing things to the show, at least on the stand level. In other words, on the actual show floor. It's not shipping within 90 days. That is the average I've heard is if it's on the show floor, you're going to get it in your hands within 90 days. Mm-hmm. I think that's huge.
Yeah, and I did actually a story that was something close to that a lot of people said that if we're showing it here, you're going to see it by springtime. That's basically what they said. And there also was a story that I wrote that was similar to what Brock had said about the shift in production cycle, that now people are, or companies are getting their products ready for ISE, not for Infocom necessarily. I mean, there certainly are plenty of new products that come out in June at Infocom, but it seems like there's a lot more priority on this international show.
No, and you and I both, and Brock probably knows these too. I mean, there are people who were pushing for ISE, and there's a handful of products that didn't quite make it for whatever reason, and said they can now say, okay, ISE is the first show of the year, so we can aim for that. And if we don't hit that mark, then we can show it, we can exhibit it at Infocom now, right? Which 3-4 months down the road gives our product engineers, gives our staff the time to fine tune those products.
Yeah, Brock, from your perspective, obviously, I know you haven't been to the show yet, but I'm curious. It's a $5,000 expense, like you said, even with some help from AVIXA. Do you see this as kind of a one-time trip for you, or do you think it's possibly something you could go to every year, or too early to tell? I guess probably at this point, huh?
I think it depends on the experience. The 15 halls. I've been to the Music Messe in Frankfurt, and that was huge, and you're schlepping from place to place to place to place. And at this point, Tim, I'm looking for advice because I don't have an attack plan. I've taken exactly one appointment on the floor at 10:30 on Tuesday morning. I get to meet Rashid at the Biamp booth.
Oh, very good. Nice.
Which I'm very much looking forward to, because I've never met the man in person, and he's an industry icon. Ron Camden has set that up for me. But other than that, I'm there to attend the Tide conference. I too am sitting on a panel that Chuck Espinoza is moderating. Jeremy Caldera is on that panel.
Oh my goodness.
Krista Bender's on that panel. I apologize, I forget the other smart people that are there. But so other than that, my calendar is empty, and I'm going to be wandering the halls looking at stuff, and maybe because I'm not running from appointment to appointment to appointment, that it'll be easier to navigate. And I can do it on kind of a grid system. I can avoid some of the areas that I'm not interested. I have one very specific product type that I'm looking for. I'm looking for an LED, direct view LED product that has some protective coating and can be used in a publicly accessible area. So that's one of my, Dave Haynes from 16.9 has given me some suggestions about where to go. I don't know if you fellas have read it, but Dave just published just a fantastic 70-page summary of the LED market. And some of the pitfalls and pratfalls that are involved for people just getting into that world for the first time. But I don't know. It's a tough time of year for me. My family will be skiing. I just get home, and I typically go visit my parents in February. It is the beginning of our fiscal year yesterday.
Oh wow!
So there's lots of competition for my time and my attention. And
so here's my 2 cents. If you go to the iseurope.org, I think is the website, and you look at the map. I divide it honestly in half, and over here on the left hand side is hall 10, hall 11, hall 9, those halls, and that's actually where you're going to find the LEDs. And over here on the right, you're going to find hall 1 and hall 5 and hall 2 and 3, and back here is 7, which is audio. I would honestly just divide it into half and spend all of your day, like day one, you're meeting Rashid on Tuesday, so maybe focus on halls 2 and 3, and because 3 is where Biamp is, and 5 and 1, which are going to take up the bulk of your day.
Right.
Because remember, the show, it doesn't end until 6 o'clock, which is another oddity for those of us in the North America, where Infocom, the show, typically ends at 5. ISE ends at 6. And then maybe on the second day, go to the left-hand side and just focus on that. And that's honestly kind of what we've done from our recording standpoint, is as we've gotten a request to come by and see stands, and we've made appointments with our underwriters, That's kind of what we did. Is we said, okay, we're in this general vicinity, this day, or we're in this general vicinity the next day, and that at least helps us be a little bit more efficient with our time.
And do you have a big crew from AVNation going again this year, Tim?
No, it's so last year we did just a small crew, and we found some efficiencies there. Most of our folks, honestly, they still work in the industry, so the folks don't have time off. So it's me and Matt Scott, who is a host of our residential show, AVWeek. So he and I will be bouncing around everywhere. So, and you have 2 appointments. We're doing a tweet up on Wednesday.
Yes, so, that is an appointment.
Yes.
And is that in Hall 11?
That is in Hall 5, sir.
But I'm doing Hall 5 on Tuesday.
Okay. Well, you can still swing by at like 5:55.
Okay.
All
right.
And if you guys happen to see a blur flying by you, that's probably our web editor, Adam Forziati, who will be going from appointment to appointment to appointment to appointment, basically every half hour on the half hour, traversing all the halls and trying to realize that Hall 12 is not necessarily next to Hall 13, and that's so I learned that lesson the hard way last year. So I did reinforce that when he's making appointments this year, that he not think that the numbers indicate where the halls happen to be.
Actually, the one that really gets you is Hall 7 into Hall 8. Because Hall 7 is on the right-hand side and Hall 8 is on the left-hand side, and there's a bridge between the two, but it's generally pretty packed because there's free Wi-Fi there. So from Hall 7 to Hall 8 is not just walking next door. So.
Nope.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. And Craig, thank you so much for doing a good job of the interviewing. How do people find you, Mr. McCormick?
They can look on commercialintegrator.com or on Twitter at Craig McCormick.
All right. And Mr. McInnes, you and I get to hang out a little bit in Amsterdam this week. So how do people find you?
I'm at westbury.com and on Twitter at Brock McGinnis. It will be a pleasure to see you in person, and hopefully we'll have some time to spend together.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely we will. So it's a busy week. It's a busy week for all of us.
Yes.
It's 4 days for those of us who do the entire show. And it's a long 4 days, but it's a short 4 days as well. And those of you who've been to trade show understand exactly what I'm talking about. Right. So you'll turn around and suddenly it'll be 4 o'clock on Friday and you won't know where the week went. So for me, don't follow me on because at this point I'm reading on the Blues and bemoaning the fact that the Bears season is over. But go by the website if you would please, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You will find this program, obviously, and a host of others. Our residential show that does exactly this, looks at the weekly news of the week for audiovisual, but in the home sector. That happens every week. We also have one that looks at control and automation, one that looks at social media and marketing, and one that looks at just the business of AV. It's called the AV Profession. We interview a bunch of folks and try to help you with your business, so check that out. Also, while you're there, check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who help us financially and help us go to Integrated Systems Europe and all the other stuff. So all that and more at avnation.tv. AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. All the time we have for AV Week.